Okay, I'm going to show you how to do a rib cast on using the double bed on the Toyota Alina 747. All the buttons are up, all in play knit on the main carriage. Adjust the tension leveler to 5 on both and plain knit. So I'm going to cast on using some waste yarn first, and this waste yarn needs to tuck down through the beds and get tucked into the hook, and I like to secure it around anything really, but this is the clasp that hooks the bed onto the table. Then with the yarn at the top here, you need to feed it through the feeder hold one piece of the yarn underneath, keeping it nice and straight, and then pulling it through into the feeder. Before taking the carriage across, make sure that the machine is in the P position. This means that the teeth are virtually lined up together. If it was in H, they move across. That will be then if you want to do a rib. But to cast on, use the P position. Then you need to put all your needles on the main bed only into working position. I'll use a ruler for this, but you can do it by hand. And working position is the B position. I want 79 on this side. Okay. Now make sure that all the other needles are in non-working position. This is a mistake that has happened to me endless times, and you then have to take the carriage off. Okay, now get the bar, this is where the knitting goes on, and take it into the middle of the machine. It's a little bit tricky doing it with one hand, but you need to make sure that the holes line up and are quite high with the bed. And then you can take the carriage across. Okay. So taking the carriage across at a good slow speed. This will then pick up all the stitches on the main bed. Then what you need to do is get your hands underneath the machine and pull the metal down and add your weights. You need to do this at this time. I've made that mistake by not doing that, and the yarn has been too loose in the carriage to knit. Okay. At this point then you can knit about 10 to 20 rows. And this is just your waste yarn. Okay, done my 20 rows. At this stage you need to move the carriage to the H position, and also now bring up your needles on the rib bed. Okay, so still into the B position. Now what you want to do when you bring up your needles, you always need to be one less than the main carriage. on both sides. You now need to replace the waste yarn with your actual yarn. I like to tie it off at the cone stage and then just pull it through. There is the knot. And then attach it onto your table clamp. And then get rid of the waste yarn completely. I like to just try and hook it through if I can. Oop. There we go. The new yarn is now in the holder and we're ready to do our first row. Making sure that the carriages are set correctly or both in plain position. So plain means plain knit, and making sure that our tension is correct. In the manual it says to put the tension dials on 0, but I like to give it a bit more of a stretch, and I've set mine as 2. So take the carriage across. Now you will come across some resistance, especially with lamb's wool I'm using. It's got not a lot of stretch about it, so take it really carefully across. Just checking that my yarn is still not too tight. Okay, and you can see here that the needles on both beds have been picked up. Okay, to secure the needles and the yarn so it doesn't fray or come apart, we need to knit the front and the back bed separately. So the first one is to press the right empty button on the main carriage and to put the other carriage on the rib up to empty, and take this across and knit one row. Okay, as you can see, this is only knitting the back bed or the rib bed. Take that over. I'm now going to increase the tension dial to 5 on both sides and knit 3 rows. So still taking it gently across. Check the yarn is coming through okay. So depending on which yarn you're using, you will come across some resistance. Check the needles, that no stitches have come off. Again, the back. And one more time. Okay, now we take off the empty buttons and put them all back to plain knit. So with no buttons showing or depressed, and the plain showing on the rib and the empty button up, we now secure them stitches by doing the plain knit. Now here's where you come across some resistance again. Just take that across. Okay, at this point you're ready to knit. You can take your stitches off to make a rib, but if you're going to carry on doing a plain knit, you need to think about your tension. So I'm going to turn mine up to 7 because I can feel the resistance, and that's a cast on.